Well, different night.
Same
story. I'm Elijah Campbell. This is Jack Veltri. Once again, we are here at the sidelines of Colonial Life Arena, live from the scene of the crime. And, well, this is starting to look like CSI reruns at this point because it is another close Gamecock loss against a ranked opponent here in this building. Ole Miss 72, South Carolina 68. Another heartbreaking loss where you had a chance to get the lead in the final minute of the game. You erased a double-digit halftime deficit and were able to come back and go toe-to-toe again with one of the best teams in the SEC, and yet again, you lose it at the end of the game where the margins are razor thin. And tonight, Jack, I mean, it's another one of those things where it wasn't turnovers that lost it for you this time, kind of like the Texas A&M game. You took care of the ball a little bit better. You got to the free throw line really well. You offensive rebounded spectacularly. You just didn't shoot as well throughout the game that Ole Miss did in the first half of the game, and ultimately throughout the course of 40 minutes. I feel like that made a big difference.
Yeah, it's almost a blur at this point with the amount of close losses they have. I mean, this is the sixth game now where in SEC play, yes, they've had a few blowout losses, but the other 6 games that they've lost have all come by 5 points or less, and tonight was no exception to that. And again, there's always a reason why South Carolina comes up short in these games. It's not just bad luck or anything. They missed so many free throws tonight. You missed 12 free throws in this game, and you lose by 4 points. You're kicking yourself for that alone. And you actually shot better at the free throw line in the second half. Like, you got on a roll in those first 10 minutes, going 9 to 12 at the line to cut the lead down to, by 3 points at one point, even though you weren't shooting very well. And you actually were playing better defense in the second half against Ole Miss. But again, it's the combination of Ole Miss shooting lights out in the first half, knocking down a handful of threes. I think it was 6 in the first half, and you just weren't making those early free throws. And then later in the game, it kind of adds up, and you end up missing 12.
Yeah, and that's the thing when you look at this game too. I mean, if we look at the positives are you found a formula for a comeback. It's being aggressive. Chris Beard, after the game, kind of accredited South Carolina's comeback to being the more aggressive team. He said they're the more aggressive team throughout most of the night, and I think we can agree with that. And Lamont said that, a lot of the second half free throw attempts were drawn by the big men in the lane because Ole Miss does play so aggressive in the painted area, and they do collapse to the point where there's physicality and you can call fouls there. And you got to the line 32 times. You got to the line for the entire game, that is, and then you got to the line 12 times in the first 7 minutes of the second half, and you were able to get a lot of points with the clock stopped, so you were able to find a way to get back into this game through offensive rebounding, through free throws. You were able to limit your turnovers against a team that's top 20 in the country in forcing turnovers. It's just incredibly frustrating that you can do a lot of things right in this game, but because of maybe some poor defensive lapses early in the game, that's what cost you. Because I think ultimately when we look at this game, the reason Ole Miss got that separation and that you had to play from behind in the first 10, 11, 12 minutes of the second half is just because they shot the lights out in that first half. At one point, Jack, I think they had an 85% effective field goal rate throughout the first 15 minutes.
Literally insane. Most of the first half, they were shooting about 70% from the floor. I mean, it was unreal. And by the way, by the end of the first half, they were shooting about 65%. Now, I'm led to believe if Ole Miss didn't have that type of performance in the first half, if it was much more akin to what we saw in the second half, South Carolina wins this game no problem. It doesn't even need to come down to free throws. But again, it's the early things in this game that end up making a difference by the end. It's the missed free throws at the beginning of the game, with Nick Pringle missing a few big free throws, and some other guys missing some shots at the line, and then Ole Miss just shooting like crazy. Again, I don't think I've seen that at all from any opponent South Carolina's played this year at that type of rate. Maybe I'm missing something, but I don't remember it being like that insane.
And you got a lot out of Colin tonight, a 20-point game. I thought he played really well for the most part. Maybe wasn't strong with the ball like he probably needed to at the beginning of the game, but you got a lot from Colin. You got a lot from the aggressiveness of your players defensively. Absolutely locked down Ole Miss for about the first 15 minutes of that second half, and that's this team's identity. That's how this team's going to win games, is on the defensive side of the floor. But I think just the one thing that people are going to focus on are the miscues in the final minute of the game. But I'm one of those, Jack, that I look at a game throughout the scope of 40 minutes and believe the first minute of the game is as important as the last. And you just fell short in too few of the plays throughout the course of a game that they're so close to having a complete game that is good enough to win. They just haven't done it for a full 40 minutes yet. And somewhere this team needs to dig down inside and be able to find a complete 40-minute game somewhere if they want to avoid going 0 for in conference.